They called her the most dangerous child in America, not because she hurt people, not because she broke bones or drew blood, but because Sophie Blackwood, 10 years old with eyes like winter storms, had the uncanny ability to find
How
exactly
can I
where you
help?
kept your pain,
I
and she
understand.
would
Let me
press on
check on
it
that for
until you
you.
shattered.
1 moment, please.
7 nannies in 6
Are you
months.
ready to order?
Each one walked
Yes,
in
I'd like the
confident,
grilled cheese,
walked out
please.
broken.
Excellent choice.
3
And to drink?
therapists,
Water's
2
fine.
private schools.
We have to
A
leave.
trail of expensive
Now.
wreckage.
What? Why?
And crushed egos
It's not safe. They're
stretching
coming.
behind this
Who?
small
Tell me
girl,
what's happening.
like the wake of a battleship. The newspapers loved her. The untamable heiress. Chicago's problem child. The girl money can't fix. But this story doesn't start with Sophie. It starts with a different kind of breaking. The sound of something expensive hitting the floor. The crystalline crash that changes everything. It starts with Zara Baptiste. The morning shift at Riverside Cafe began the way every morning began for Zara, with her feet already aching before the first customer walked through the door. She stood at Station 3, the worn section, near the kitchen, where the lighting was bad and the tips were worse, rolling silverware into white napkins with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before. 23 years old. Dark skin that caught the weak November light filtering through the cafe windows. Hair pulled back in tight braids because anything else would have management talking about professionalism. Sneakers from the Goodwill on Clark Street, $5, 2 years old. The soles worn so thin she could feel every crack in the cafe's tile floor. She was invisible here. Another black girl in an apron serving coffee to people who never looked at her face. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Order up, Zara. Table 7. She moved through the cafe's rhythm without thinking. Coffee cream on the side. The businessman who never said thank you. Pancakes extra syrup, the elderly woman who always left exactly 15%. The work was mindless, which meant her mind could be elsewhere. On the psychology textbook in her backpack. On the online lecture she'd watched tonight at midnight after her second shift. On the student loan debt that sat on her chest like a stone, $80,000 for a degree she was still 3 years from finishing. Her father used to say, "Education is how you build a different life, baby girl." Then he'd worked himself to death, proving it. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Heart attack at 51, right there in the cab he drove 16 hours a day. Zara rolled another set of silverware, picked up another pot of coffee, smiled at another customer who didn't see her. This was survival. This was the plan. Keep your head down, get through school, become someone who could help people understand their pain instead of just serving them eggs while they pretended theirs didn't exist. The plan was working fine until 2:47 p.m. on a gray Tuesday in November, when Marcus Blackwood walked through the door with his daughter, and everything Zara thought she knew about surviving came apart like wet paper. She saw him first. Hard not to. Marcus Blackwood didn't walk into rooms so much as he altered them, the way gravity bends around something massive. 6'2", expensive suit that probably cost more than Zara made in 6 months, the kind of watch that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. But it was his face that stopped her. Magazine covers never showed this. The Forbes profile from last month had shown Marcus Blackwood, CEO, 40 under 40, Chicago's tech darling, worth north of $3 billion. Sharp jaw, confident smile, eyes that promised he could solve any problem you put in front of him. The man walking through the Riverside Cafe looked like he'd been hollowed out from the inside. Dark circles under his eyes. Stubble that suggested he'd stopped caring about the details. The way his shoulders curved forward like he was trying to make himself smaller. This was a man who'd been losing a war, and behind him came the war itself. Sophie Blackwood was small for 10, dark hair pulled back so tight it seemed painful, making her face look sharp and angular. School uniform crisp and perfect, every pleat exactly where it should be. She moved like something coiled, ready to strike, her eyes sweeping the cafe with the cold assessment of a general surveying a battlefield. Zara watched them from across the room and felt something shift in her chest. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. The cafe had gone quiet. People knew who Marcus Blackwood was. People definitely knew who his daughter was. The stories had made the news. The nanny who'd quit on camera crying. The school board meeting where Sophie had somehow gotten access to the superintendent's private emails. The therapist who'd filed a complaint claiming emotional harassment from a 10-year-old. "Table for 2, Marcus said to Jenny at the host stand. His voice was hollow, scraped clean of everything except exhaustion. Jenny's eyes went wide. She looked around for anyone else to handle this. Found Zara. Mouthed, "Please." Zara picked up 2 menus and walked over. Up close, Sophie Blackwood looked even smaller. but her eyes, when they locked on Zara, were anything but small. They were calculating, measuring, filing away information for later use. This way, Zara said, her voice level. She led them to corner booth 12, the one with the cracked vinyl and the wobbly table. Not the best seat, but isolated. Private. Maybe they'd appreciate that. Sophie slid into the booth and stopped. Her nose wrinkled. This seat is wet. Marcus didn't even look up from his phone. It's not, sweetheart. It is. Sophie's voice was crisp, certain. And that light. She pointed at the fixture above them. It's buzzing. I can hear it. It's going to give me a headache. I can't possibly eat here. Zara stood there, notepad in hand, and watched. She'd seen tantrums before. Crying kids demanding customers, people who sent food back 3 times just to feel powerful. This wasn't that. This was theater. This was a girl who'd learned that if she created enough chaos, people would do anything to make it stop. Sophie wasn't having a breakdown. She was conducting an experiment, and she expected Zara to fail it. I can turn off that light if you'd like, Zara said calmly. Sophie's eyes snapped to her. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, gone almost instantly. The first crack in the performance. The water, Sophie said, picking up the glass Zara had just filled. She sniffed it dramatically. It tastes like metal. Are you trying to poison me? Most people would get defensive here, start apologizing, offering replacements, calling for the manager. The script was simple: customer complains, employee scrambles. Zara set down her notepad. It's tap water, she said, her voice matter of fact. Chicago's finest, filtered through the city system, tested daily, same as everyone else in here is drinking. Would you like bottled instead? Sophie blinked. I want the water we have at home, from the springs in Iceland, imported. We don't have that. Then get some. I can get you bottled water, Zara said, each word clear and simple. Or you can drink the tap water, or you can have nothing. Those are your choices. The cafe had gone silent. At the counter, Jenny stared. In the kitchen, Jose had stopped cooking. This was the moment when employees, usually bent broke, called management. Zara just stood there, pen ready, waiting. Marcus looked up from his phone for the first time since sitting down. His eyes moved between his daughter and this waitress who'd just done something impossible. She hadn't yelled, hadn't caved, had simply stated reality and then stopped talking. Sophie's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled around the water glass. This was the moment Zara could see it, where the girl would escalate. Throw the water, scream, demand to see the manager. Instead, Sophie said, grilled cheese. Victory, small but real, flashed across Marcus's face. But, Sophie continued, her voice sharpening, on whole wheat bread, not white, with aged cheddar, not American cheese, crusts cut off, in squares, not triangles. And if there's even one brown spot, even one edge that's darker than the rest, I'm sending it back. Zara wrote it down. Got it. And for you, sir. Marcus looked at her like she was performing a miracle just by standing there. Just coffee, black. Coming right up. Zara walked back to the kitchen and put in the order. Jose read it, looked at her, raised his eyebrows. The Blackwood kid. Yeah. You know she made the last waitress cry. I heard. She throw anything yet? Not yet. Jose grinned. I give it 5 minutes. It took 12. Zara brought out the sandwich. Perfect. Golden brown on both sides, cheese melted exactly right, crust removed with surgical precision, cut into 4 perfect squares. She'd watched Jose make it, had him remake it once when one corner looked half a shade darker than the others. She placed it in front of Sophie with the same care she'd use handling nitroglycerin. Sophie inspected it, turned the plate, lifted the top piece of bread with one finger, sniffed it. Her face remained expressionless, giving nothing away. Then with a sudden violent motion, she swept her arm across the table. The plate, the sandwich, the full glass of water, all of it crashed to the floor in an explosion of ceramic and bread and ice. The entire cafe froze. 30 people, all of them, staring at the small girl in the school uniform who'd just destroyed her lunch, like it had personally offended her. It was brown, Sophie hissed, her voice cold and controlled. I told you, no brown spots. Marcus put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. For a moment, Zara thought he was crying. Then she realized he was just so far past crying that his body had forgotten how. I'm sorry, Tom, he whispered to no one, to everyone. I'm so sorry. The manager, Rick, came storming out from the back office, his face already red. That's it. You need to leave. Right now. I don't care who. Zara held up one hand, stopping him. Then she did something no one expected. She knelt down. Not to clean up the mess. She picked up one small square of sandwich and looked at it closely, turned it over, examined the edge. Then she looked up at Sophie. "You're right," Zara said quietly. "This edge is a little darker than the other sides. My mistake." Sophie's mouth fell open. Of all the possible reactions, of all the ways this could have gone, simple, honest agreement was the one thing she'd never encountered before. Adults yelled or they caved. They didn't just agree and move on. "But I have a question," Zara continued, still kneeling at eye level with the girl. "That throw, was it a 10 out of 10? Or more like a 7? Sophie stared. "Because the plate got good distance," Zara said, starting to pick up the broken pieces carefully. "That was solid, but the water splash was kind of messy, not very controlled. If you're going to make a scene, it should be epic." "That was okay, predictable even." She stood up, holding the shattered remains. "You seem smarter than that. I bet you could come up with something more creative." And there it was, just for a second, barely visible, quickly hidden. The tiniest hint of a smile on Sophie Blackwood's face before she caught herself and made it disappear. "Shut up," Sophie muttered, but there was no heat in it. "Fair enough," Zara said. "Are you still hungry, or was that just for show?" Marcus was staring at Zara like she'd just walked on water. Rick, the manager, stood frozen, his anger completely derailed. And Sophie, dangerous? Sophie, untamable. Sophie just sat there looking at this waitress with something that might have been respect. "I want," Sophie said slowly, "chicken fingers with honey mustard, not barbecue sauce." "Coming up," Zara said, and walked back to the kitchen like nothing unusual had happened. Jose was already making the order before she said a word. "That girl smiled at you," he said. "I saw it. First time I ever seen that kid smile." "She's just testing boundaries," Zara said. "Seeing who'll hold them and who'll run. And you held them. For now. For now is longer than most people get." They stayed another hour. Sophie ate her chicken fingers without incident. Marcus drank 3 cups of coffee and kept looking at Zara like he was trying to solve an equation. When they finally got up to leave, Marcus handed her a $100 bill for a $30 tab. "Keep it," he said. "Sir, I can get your change." "Keep it, please." He looked like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he just guided Sophie toward the door, one hand on her shoulder in that careful way parents touch children they're afraid of breaking or being broken by. They were almost out when Sophie turned around, looked directly at Zara. "Your shoes are ugly. They're $5 from Goodwill. They've lasted 2 years. I'd say they're beautiful." Sophie's eyes narrowed. Then she was gone out into the gray Chicago afternoon. Zara went back to work, cleared their table, wiped down the vinyl, collected the $100 bill, and tried to ignore the way her hands were shaking. "You okay?" Jenny asked. "Yeah, just another Tuesday." But it wasn't, and Zara knew it wasn't. Something had shifted in those 72 minutes. Some door had opened that she didn't know how to close. She finished her shift, took the train home to her apartment in Rogers Park, the one she shared with 2 roommates where the heat barely worked, and the walls were so thin she could hear conversations 3 units down. She made ramen for dinner because it was all she could afford until payday. She opened her psychology textbook and tried to focus on developmental trauma in children. But all she could see was Sophie's face. That flash of a smile, that moment when the performance had cracked and something real had shown through. A 10-year-old girl who'd figured out that if you push everyone away first, they can't leave you. A 10-year-old girl who was very, very good at being alone. Zara closed her textbook, stared at the ceiling, thought about her father working himself to death to give her a better life. Thought about Mrs. O'Sullivan next door, the old Irish woman who taught her to play chess after her mother left, who'd said over and over, "Loud move is not smart move, child. You gotta find the smart move." What was the smart move here? Go back to work tomorrow. Forget about the girl with winter storm eyes. Focus on surviving, on getting through school, on building a life that didn't involve other people's broken children. That was the smart move. So why did it feel like running at 9:47 p.m.? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Probably a spam call. Probably nothing. "Hello, Miss Baptiste." A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "My name is Margaret. I'm calling on behalf of Marcus Blackwood. He'd like to meet with you. A car will pick you up in 1 hour." Zara's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what I don't—" "1 hour, Miss Baptiste. The driver will wait downstairs." The line went dead. For a long moment, Zara just sat there, phone in hand, hard hammering. This didn't happen. Billionaires didn't call waitresses. This was a mistake. Had to be a mistake. She could not answer the door. Could pretend she wasn't home. could make this whole weird day disappear by simply choosing not to engage with it. Loud move or smart move. 58 minutes later, she was standing on the sidewalk in her best jeans and her only jacket without holes, watching a black car that cost more than her annual salary pull up to the curb. The driver got out, opened the back door. Miss Baptiste. She got in. The interior was leather and wood, and that particular smell of wealth, the one that whispered about comfort she'd never known. The driver said nothing as they pulled away from her building, heading east toward the lake, toward the part of Chicago where people like Zara only went to clean houses or serve food. They drove for 20 minutes. The buildings got taller, shinier, more impossible. Finally, they pulled up to a tower of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. This way, ma'am. The lobby was marble and silence. The elevator was private, required a key card, opened directly into the penthouse. The doors slid open on a space so large, so achingly beautiful that Zara forgot to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Chicago. Art on the walls that she recognized from textbooks. Furniture that probably had names and pedigrees. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, was Marcus Blackwood. He turned when she entered. Up close in better light, he looked even more exhausted, but also more present, more focused than he'd been in the cafe. "Miss Baptiste," he said, "thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" He almost smiled. "No, I suppose you didn't. Please sit." She sat on a couch that was probably worth more than her car. Her Goodwill shoes looked even more worn against the pristine white carpet. Marcus moved to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of something amber, then seemed to think better of it and set the glass down untouched. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. "What I saw today. No one has ever done that. Not the nannies with their credentials and their methods, not the therapists with their degrees, not the teachers, not the specialists. You didn't baby her, you didn't yell at her, and you didn't break." He paused. "How true." Zara chose her words carefully. "I was just doing my job, Mr. Blackwood." "No, you were doing something else. You saw her. Everyone else sees a monster or a paycheck or a problem to solve. You saw something different. What was it?" The honest answer formed in Zara's mind before she could stop it. "I saw a kid who's really, really good at her job, and her job is making people leave." Marcus nodded slowly, something breaking in his eyes. 7 nannies in 6 months, 3 schools, 2 psychologists quit mid-treatment. I can solve billion-dollar problems, Miss Baptiste. I've built companies, navigated markets, made impossible deals happen. But I cannot reach my own daughter. His voice cracked on the last word. He turned away, looking out at Chicago, and Zara saw his shoulders shake. "Mr. Blackwood." "Marcus, please." "Marcus." She stood up, moved closer, but not too close. "I'm a waitress. I'm studying psychology, but I'm not qualified. I'm not what you need. The qualified people have all failed." He turned back to her. "They come with their degrees and their methods and their $500 an hour fees, and she destroys them. She's 10 years old, and she destroys adults who've spent their whole lives learning how to help children." He moved to his desk. "They're afraid of her, or they're afraid of me, or they're afraid of failing. You weren't afraid of either." "I was terrified," Zara said honestly, "but you didn't let her see it, and you didn't let it change how you treated her." He picked up a folder from his desk. "I want to hire you, not as a nanny, not as a tutor or a therapist, as a companion, someone to spend time with her, to do whatever it was you did today." "I can't. I have my job. I have school. I'll pay you $350,000 a year." The room tilted. That number was so big it didn't feel real. That was freedom. That was her student loans gone like smoke. That was her father's memory honored. That was a different life. "I'll also cover your tuition," Marcus continued. "Any school you want. Master's degree, PhD, wherever this takes you. Full ride." "Why me?" Zara whispered. "Because you're the first person she's looked at in 2 years without hatred in her eyes. Because you called her predictable. Because she smiled," Zara finished. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. His voice barely made it past his throat. "You saw that too." Before Zara could answer, a cold voice cut through the room. "Marcus, you cannot be serious." A woman emerged from a side door, tall, thin, blonde, wearing a designer dress that probably cost what Zara made in a month. Her face was all sharp angles and controlled beauty, and when she looked at Zara, it was the way someone might look at mud tracked onto white carpet. "This is a child," the woman said, her voice dripping with disdain. not a stray dog you found on the street. Victoria, this doesn't concern you. Marcus's voice hardened. Sophie is my niece. It concerns me entirely. Victoria Blackwood turned her cold eyes on Zara, and there it was, naked and obvious. Not just class prejudice, race prejudice, the way her nose wrinkled slightly, the way she took a small step back. You're a waitress. What exactly do you think you can offer my niece? The anger that rose in Zara's chest was familiar, old tired. She'd felt it 1,000 times. Walking into stores where security followed her. Job interviews where she was clearly not what they'd expected. Rooms where she was the only black face and everyone smiled too much and touched their purses. But underneath the anger was something else. Clarity. You're right, Zara said, standing up. I'm not qualified. I don't have fancy degrees. I don't know anything about your world. Victoria smiled triumphantly. But I also don't have anything to lose, Zara continued. All those other people, they wanted to keep their jobs. They wanted to impress you. They bent themselves into knots trying to be perfect. I don't want your money. Both Marcus and Victoria looked shocked. I mean, I do, Zara corrected herself. It's life-changing money, but if I take this job, I have conditions. Conditions, Victoria laughed. You're in no position to... One, Zara said, her courage building with each word. I'm not a nanny. I'm not a servant. I'm just a person spending time with another person. I'm not here to fix her. I'm here to be with her. Marcus nodded slowly. Agreed. Two, Zara looked directly at Victoria. You stay away from me and from Sophie when I'm with her. Whatever you think you're doing to help, it's not helping. Victoria's face went red with fury. How dare you? And three, Zara said, looking back at Marcus. You have to be involved. I'm not a replacement for you. If I call you, come. If I say you need to be at dinner, you're there. No excuses. Your money can't buy you out of this one. The penthouse went silent. Marcus Blackwood, one of the richest men in America, stared at this 23-year-old waitress in $5 shoes who just demanded he be a father. Then he smiled. A real smile, the first one Zara had seen. When can you start? She started Monday at 3:30 p.m., right when Sophie got home from Dalton Academy. The penthouse wasn't a home. It was a museum. Cold, perfect, empty. Every surface gleamed. Every piece of art was positioned with mathematical precision. There were no photos on the walls, no toys scattered across floors, no signs that real people lived here, that a child grew here. It looked like a place where people came to forget they had hearts. Zara stood in the entrance hall, holding a paper bag from Riverside Cafe, waiting. At 3:32, she heard the elevator. The doors opened. A private driver nodded to Zara and stepped aside. Sophie Blackwood walked out, still in her school uniform, backpack over one shoulder. She stopped dead when she saw Zara standing there. You? Sophie said flatly. Me, Zara replied. She held up the paper bag. I brought you a grilled cheese. Whole wheat, aged cheddar, crusts off, squares, not triangles, not too brown. Sophie stared at the bag like it might explode. I'm not hungry. Okay. Zara sat down on an uncomfortable modern bench near the elevator and pulled out the sandwich. I am. She unwrapped it and took a bite. It was good. Jose knew his way around a griddle. Sophie stood there, arms crossed, watching. You're not supposed to eat in the entrance hall. Where am I supposed to eat? Zara asked between bites. In the kitchen, with the staff. Your dad hired me as a companion, not staff. Besides, this bench is terrible, but it's here, so I'm using it. Want a bite? No, I have homework. Sophie turned and marched up the grand staircase, her footsteps echoing in the huge space. Zara called after her. Okay, I'll be down here. For 3 hours, Zara sat in that entrance hall. She read her psychology textbook. She did a crossword puzzle. She ate her sandwich slowly, making it last. She looked around at the massive space and felt the loneliness of it seep into her bones. No photos, no personal items, no warmth. Just expensive furniture arranged like chess pieces, beautiful and cold and strategic. This wasn't a home where a child could heal. It was a showroom where a child could hide. At 6:30, a staff member appeared, elderly and kind-faced. Dinner is ready, Miss Baptiste, in the dining room. The dining room was absurd. A table that could seat 30 people, crystal chandeliers, windows overlooking the lake, and two place settings at opposite ends of the massive table, so far apart they might as well have been in different zip codes. Sophie appeared exactly at 6:30, punctual as a train schedule. She sat down without looking at Zara. The food was incredible. Some kind of fish with vegetables Zara couldn't name, prepared by a chef whose salary probably exceeded hers. Sophie picked at hers, moving it around the plate without eating. Could you pass the salt? Zara asked. The salt was at least 20 feet away next to Sophie. Sophie looked at her, then at the salt, then back at her. No. Okay. Zara stood up, walked the length of the table, got the salt, walked back, sat down, salted her fish. They ate in silence. Finally, Zara said, "So, this new school, Dalton, is it better or worse than the last one?" "It's boring." "What's boring about it?" "Everything. The teachers are stupid. The kids are stupid." "Must be lonely," Zara said, cutting her fish carefully, being the only smart person in the whole building. Sophie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "You're stupid too." "Probably," Zara agreed. "I'm definitely failing statistics, but I'm pretty good at spotting a liar." Sophie put her fork down. "I'm not lying." "You are. You don't think they're stupid. You think they're something else. But stupid is easier to say. It's a shield, keeps people from asking more questions." For a long moment, Sophie just stared at her. Then she stood up. "I'm done." She left, her food barely touched, her defenses fully raised. Zara sat there in the enormous dining room alone with her fish and her thoughts and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. This became the pattern. Every day Sophie would test. Every day Zara would deflect. Sophie would insult. Zara would agree and redirect. It was exhausting. It was slow. It was like trying to dig through concrete with a spoon. But Zara didn't give up, because she'd seen that smile. She knew there was something real under all the armor. And unlike everyone else, she didn't need Sophie to be fixed. She just needed Sophie to know that someone would stay even when it was hard, even when it hurt. The breakthrough came by accident on day 11. Zara was looking for a bathroom lost in the penthouse's maze of hallways when she heard it. Piano music. Someone was playing something complicated, making mistakes, cursing under their breath, starting over. She followed the sound to a room with the door cracked open. Inside, covered in dust cloths like ghosts, was a beautiful grand piano. And sitting at it, lost in concentration, was Sophie. She wasn't just playing, she was pouring her whole heart into it. Her small face was tight with emotion, her fingers moving across the keys with a grace that belonged to someone much older. The music was Chopin complex and wooden beautiful. She hit a wrong note. Her hands came down hard on the keys, making an ugly crash. "Damn it!" Then she saw Zara's reflection in the piano's polished surface. The change was instant. Sophie spun around, her face twisted with something that looked like panic, like fear, like a wild animal cornered. "Get out!" she screamed. She slammed the piano lid shut so hard the whole instrument shook. "You're not allowed in here. No one is allowed in here." Sophie was shaking. Her eyes were wide. This wasn't the calculating girl from the cafe. This wasn't performance. This was someone terrified and raw and completely unguarded. "Okay," Zara said gently, backing toward the door. "I'm sorry, I'm going." She closed the door quietly and stood in the hallway, her heart pounding. That room, that piano, that reaction. Something in there mattered more than anything else in this cold, perfect house. She found Marcus in his study, working late as always. He looked up when she knocked, and something in her face made him stand immediately. "What happened?" "Sophie was playing piano in a room upstairs. When she saw me, she panicked. Like really panicked." "What is that room?" Marcus went pale. He actually swayed, grabbing the edge of his desk. "The music room," he whispered. "She's been in there. She's been practicing. She's incredible, but she's also carrying something heavy in there." Marcus sat down slowly, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. "It was my wife's room, Rachel. She was a concert pianist. That was her practice room, her sanctuary." His voice broke. "She died 2 years ago. I locked the room. I thought if we didn't talk about her, didn't live with the reminders, it would hurt less. I thought I was protecting Sophie." "It doesn't work that way," Zara said quietly. "The pain doesn't disappear. It just goes underground." Marcus looked at her with hollow eyes. "I know that now. I just didn't know what else to do. And now my daughter has been alone with that grief for 2 years, and I gave her no way to talk about it, and she's been sneaking into her dead mother's room to play her dead mother's music, and I didn't even know." He put his head in his hands and cried. Not quiet tears, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. The kind of crying that comes when you finally admit you've failed at the thing that matters most. Zara stood there uncertain. She wasn't trained for this, wasn't prepared for watching a billionaire collapse under the weight of his own grief. But maybe that was the point. Maybe what both of them needed wasn't someone trained, just someone willing to stay in the room while they fell apart. When Marcus finally looked up, his eyes were red but clearer. What do I do? I don't know, Zara admitted, but I think maybe we start by not locking doors anymore, and by being honest about the fact that we're all just trying to survive the worst thing that ever happened to us. Marcus nodded, wiped his face. Rachel would have liked you. She always said the most important thing wasn't knowledge. It was courage. The courage to stay present with pain instead of running from it. She sounds like she was smart. She was the smartest person I ever met. And I've spent 2 years trying to forget her because remembering hurt too much. And in the process, I taught my daughter to do the same thing. He looked at Zara. Help me fix that, please. I can't fix it, but I can stay while we figure it out together. It was the best promise she could make, the only honest one. And for the first time since she'd walked into this cold, perfect penthouse, Zara felt like maybe she was exactly where she needed to be. The music room stayed locked for 3 more days. Sophie didn't come down for dinner. She claimed she was sick, her voice flat and emotionless through the heavy oak door of her bedroom. Zara brought soup each evening, knocked twice, left the tray on the floor. Every morning the soup was gone, the bowl rinsed and placed outside the door with mathematical precision. A ghost lived in this penthouse. A small ghost who played piano in secret and ate soup in silence and refused to be seen. On the third night, Zara sat outside Sophie's door, her back against the wall, her psychology textbook open in her lap, but the words swimming meaninglessly across the page. Inside, she could hear nothing. The silence was so complete, it felt aggressive, weaponized. I had a teacher once, Zara said to the door. Mrs. O'Sullivan. Old Irish woman, must have been 75, smelled like lavender and whiskey. She lived next door to me when I was 12. No response from inside. That was the year my mom left. Just walked out one Tuesday morning and never came back. No note, no explanation, just gone. Zara traced a pattern on the carpet with her finger. I got so angry. I'd break things, throw things, picked fights with kids twice my size because I wanted everyone to hurt as much as I did. Still nothing. But Zara thought maybe the silence felt different. Less aggressive, more listening. Mrs. O'Sullivan, she didn't try to fix me. Didn't tell me to calm down or get over it or any of that garbage. She just taught me to play chess. And whenever I'd make a bad move, slam my pieces down, try to flip the board, she'd look at me real calm and say, that is a very loud move, Zara, but it is not a smart move. Find the smart move. Zara closed her textbook. Your Aunt Victoria was here tonight. She's making loud moves. But you're smarter than she is, so what's the smart move? The door opened. Sophie stood there in pajamas, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, making her look younger and more vulnerable than Zara had ever seen her. Her eyes were red not from crying, but from the kind of exhaustion that comes from holding yourself together so tightly you forget how to breathe. She told my dad I asked the chef to make fish last week, Sophie said quietly, looking down at her bare feet. She knows I hate fish. She does that. Tells him things I supposedly want, things she knows will make me upset. Then when I freak out, she gives him this look. Like, see, I told you she was difficult. The anger that flooded through Zara was cold and clarifying. This wasn't just a difficult aunt. This was calculated cruelty. Systematic sabotage. How long has she been doing that? Since Mom died. Sophie looked up and her eyes were ancient. She used to just ignore me before. But after Mom was gone, she started visiting more. Started telling Dad she wanted to help. And every time she helps, things get worse. But Dad doesn't see it. He just sees me being impossible. So the smart move, Zara said carefully, is not to give her the satisfaction. Let's go to dinner. She's still here. I know, that's why we're going. The dining room felt different with 3 people in it. Catherine Blackwood sat at the side of the long table, positioned like a chess queen, perfectly placed to control the board. She wore Chanel cream, colored her blonde hair swept up in a style that probably required a professional. Diamonds at her throat, a smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. She looked up when Zara and Sophie entered, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, annoyance, calculation. Lily, darling, Catherine said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. You're feeling better. Sophie corrected quietly. My name is Sophie. Of course, my apologies. Catherine's smile sharpened. I was so worried about you. Marcus entered from his study phone still in hand, that permanent exhaustion carved into his face. But he stopped when he saw his daughter at the table. Actually stopped and looked at her like he was seeing something he'd thought he'd lost. Hey, kiddo. Hi, Dad. They sat, the staff brought out the first course. Catherine monopolized the conversation talking about charity galas and board meetings and people whose names meant nothing to Zara, but seemed to carry weight in Marcus's world. She was good at this, Zara realized. Good at filling space with noise, at making herself indispensable through sheer persistence. Then the main course arrived. Duck. Beautifully prepared skin, crispy and golden, arranged on the plate like art. Catherine clasped her hands together. Oh, wonderful duck. I told the chef this was your absolute favorite, Sophie, just like your mother used to make it. The room froze. Marcus's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His face went white. Mentioning Rachel at dinner was forbidden, an unspoken rule that everyone in this house knew and followed. Everyone except Catherine. Sophie's hands curled into fists in her lap. Zara could see the storm building, see the trap closing. This was perfect for Catherine. If Sophie exploded, if she screamed about her dead mother, or threw her plate, or ran from the room, Catherine would look at Marcus with those knowing eyes and whisper, "See, she's not getting better. She's getting worse. You need help. My help." Zara caught Sophie's eye across the table, mouthed two words, "Smart move." Sophie took a deep breath, her hands uncurled. She picked up her knife and fork with careful, deliberate precision. "Actually, Aunt Catherine," Sophie said, her voice perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. "Mom never made duck. She was vegetarian. For ethical reasons, she wouldn't even let Dad buy leather furniture." Catherine's smile froze on her face. "You're the one who always orders duck when you come here," Sophie continued. She cut a small piece, brought it to her mouth, chewed carefully. "But this is fine. Chef Bernard is very talented." Marcus looked from his daughter to his sister, understanding dawning in his eyes like a slow sunrise. "Rachel was vegetarian," he said slowly, "for 16 years. How could you forget that, Catherine?" "I must have been thinking of someone else," Catherine said quickly. "So many family dinners, they all blur together." "Do they?" Marcus's voice had gone cold in a way Zara had never heard before. "Because I remember every single dinner I had with my wife, every single one, and she never not once cooked or ate duck." Catherine's face flushed red. She looked at Zara, and the hatred in her eyes was naked now, undisguised. This waitress, this nobody, had somehow taught Sophie to dodge the trap, had somehow made the child unbreakable. "Well," Catherine said, standing abruptly, "I should be going. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Marcus will talk later about the foundation board." "Yes," Marcus said, "we will." Catherine left her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, the sound of a retreat that wanted to sound like a victory. When she was gone, Marcus looked at his daughter. "You were vegetarian too, for 3 years, because your mom was." "I stopped after she died." Sophie's voice was small. It felt like it didn't matter anymore. "It mattered," Marcus said. "She would have been proud of you for trying." It was the first time Zara had heard him talk about Rachel in present tense, like she was still somehow here, still watching, still caring. Sophie's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. They finished dinner in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not empty. Full. After dinner, Sophie went upstairs without being asked. Zara started to follow, but Marcus stopped her with a hand on her arm. "What you did tonight, teaching her to control herself instead of react, that was remarkable. I didn't teach her anything. She already knew how. She just needed permission to use it." "Catherine is my sister," Marcus said, and there was pain in his voice. "After Rachel died, she was the only family I had left who understood what we'd lost. I trusted her. And she's been using that trust to make Sophie look unstable." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm starting to see that, but I don't understand why. What does she gain from my daughter being difficult?" Zara thought about the house, the money, the control, about the way Catherine talked about foundation boards and family trusts, about the way she looked at Sophie like a problem to be managed rather than a child to be loved. "I don't know," Zara said carefully, "but I think you should find out." The next week passed in a strange new rhythm. Sophie started leaving her room, started eating dinner at regular times. She didn't talk much, but she was present, watching everything with those sharp eyes. One afternoon, Zara found Sophie in the music room. The door was open this time. Sophie sat at the piano, not playing, just running her fingers over the keys without pressing down. "Can I come in?" Sophie nodded. The room was beautiful in daylight. Large windows overlooked the lake. The walls were covered in photographs, the only personal photos Zara had seen in this entire house. Rachel Blackwood in concert halls. Rachel with a young Sophie on her lap at the piano. Rachel and Marcus young and laughing before tragedy made them strangers. She was playing for the Chicago Symphony, Sophie said, following Zara's gaze. This was her warm-up room. She'd practice here for hours before every performance. She touched one of the photos, leaving a small fingerprint on the glass. I was supposed to start lessons with her. Real lessons, not just the fun stuff. She died 3 days before my first official lesson. I'm sorry. Everyone says that. Sorry, like the word means something. Sophie's voice wasn't angry, just tired. Dad locked the room the day after the funeral, said it was too painful to keep it open. So I picked the lock. Taught myself from YouTube videos. It's not that hard, actually. Most locks are designed to keep out random people, not determined children. How long have you been coming here? Since the first nanny, Mrs. Peterson. She found me in here once, told Dad he put a better lock on the door. So I learned to pick that one too. The third nanny, she tried to take the piano out of the house. Dad fired her. Sophie's smile was bitter. That's when they started calling me impossible, when I fought to keep my mom's piano. Zara sat down on the bench beside her. Play something. What? Play something, whatever you want. Sophie hesitated. Then her fingers found the keys and the room filled with Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat, Major Opus 9, number 2. The same piece she'd been playing the first time Zara found her. It was technically perfect, but emotionally devastating, every note carrying the weight of 2 years of grief poured into ivory and strings. When she finished, her hands stayed on the keys, shaking slightly. That was your mom's favorite. Sunday mornings, she'd play this before breakfast. Said it made the day start soft, like the world was still sleeping. It's beautiful. You're beautiful when you play. Sophie looked at her sharply. I'm not beautiful. I'm angry and mean and impossible. You're a 10-year-old who lost her mom and whose father locked away all the memories because he couldn't handle his own pain. You're not impossible. You're surviving. There's a difference. For a long moment, Sophie said nothing. Then, I have a friend at school, Ava. She keeps trying to sit with me at lunch. What do? Tell her to go away. She doesn't listen. She just sits there anyway, eating her sandwich, talking about stupid things like movies and homework. Sophie's voice cracked. What if I hurt her? What if I make her hate me like everyone else? What if you don't? Everyone leaves eventually. Not everyone. I'm still here. You're getting paid to be here. I'm getting paid to be your companion, not your emotional punching bag. I could do this job a lot easier if I just let you push me around, stayed out of your way, collected my check. But I'm sitting in your mom's music room, talking about feelings because I choose to be. The money just made it possible. Sophie looked at her with those ancient eyes. Ava shared her chips with me yesterday. Salt and vinegar. I told her they were disgusting. Were they? They were delicious. I told her I hate them because if she thinks I like them, she might bring them again, and then I'd have to acknowledge that she's being nice to me. That's a very loud move, Sophie. A small smile. I know, I'm working on finding the smart move. The smart move might be letting people in. That's terrifying. Most smart moves are. That evening, Marcus joined them for dinner without being asked. He sat at the head of the table instead of at the far end. The distance shrank from 30 feet to 10. I talked to the principal at Dalton today, Marcus said, about your progress. Mrs. Chen says you've been participating more in class. Mrs. Chen teaches history. She's boring but not stupid. High praise from you. Sophie almost smiled. She lets me argue with her about interpretations. Most teachers just want you to repeat what the textbook says. Your mother was like that, always questioning, always pushing back against the official narrative. Drove her teachers crazy. Marcus paused. She'd be proud of you, kiddo. Sophie's fork clattered against her plate. Don't. Don't what? Don't say things like that. Don't pretend to know what she'd think. You locked her away. You locked everything away like she never existed. Marcus flinched like he'd been struck. I know, I was wrong. I thought if we didn't talk about her, it would hurt less. But it doesn't. It just hurts differently. I play her piano, Sophie said, her voice fierce now. Every day, I pick the locks on her music room, and I taught myself her favorite pieces, and I sit in her chair and I try to remember what she sounded like when she played. And you never even asked. You never even noticed. I noticed. Marcus's voice broke. I heard you playing at night. Sometimes I'd stand outside of the door and listen, but I didn't come in because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to tell you that hearing that music breaks my heart and heals it at the same time. Father and daughter stared at each other across 10 feet of expensive table, across 2 years of locked doors and unspoken grief. I miss her, Sophie whispered. So do I. I'm afraid I'm forgetting what her voice sounded like. I have recordings, concert recordings, interviews. I've been saving them. I thought, Marcus's voice failed him. I thought I was protecting you by hiding them. But I was just protecting myself. Can we watch them together? Yes, tonight, right now if you want. They stood at the same time, moved toward each other carefully like two people learning to exist in the same space again. When they met in the middle, Marcus pulled Sophie into a hug, and she let him, her small body rigid at first, then gradually softening. Zara stayed at the table, giving them privacy, giving them space to find each other again. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not easy, just two people deciding that being together was worth being broken in front of each other. But Catherine Blackwood was not finished. 2 days later, Zara arrived at the penthouse to find the staff clustered in small groups whispering. The energy felt wrong, charged with nervous electricity. Maria, the housekeeper, who'd always been kind to Zara, intercepted her at the elevator. Miss Baptiste, Mr. Blackwood wants to see you in his study. Miss Catherine is with him. Zara's stomach dropped. What happened? I don't know, but it's not good. The walk to Marcus's study felt like walking to an execution. Zara knocked. Marcus's voice, flat and cold, told her to enter. He stood behind his desk, every inch the CEO, now the exhausted father, gone. Catherine sat in a chair, her posture perfect, her face arranged in an expression of tragic sympathy. Miss Baptiste, Marcus said. His voice was ice. This morning I discovered something missing from my bedroom safe, a diamond necklace that belonged to my wife, the Nightingale. It was her favorite. She wore it at our wedding. I don't understand. It's worth approximately $1.2 million. He picked up a small piece of paper from his desk. When I realized it was gone, when I questioned the staff, no one knew anything. But Catherine, she had a feeling. Catherine held up a pawn shop receipt. I found this in the pocket of your jacket, the one you left here 2 days ago. I called the shop. They have a necklace matching the Nightingale's description. Sold to them last week. The room spun. Zara's vision narrowed to that small piece of paper, that terrible proof of something she hadn't done. No, that's impossible. I've never seen that before. I didn't take anything. The receipt is dated last Wednesday, Marcus said, and the disappointment in his voice was worse than any anger could have been. You were here alone for 2 hours that afternoon while I was in meetings and Sophie was at school. I didn't do this. Please. You know me. Do I? Marcus's voice cracked. I've known you for 3 weeks, Miss Baptiste. 3 weeks, and in that time you've had access to everything in this house. The cameras, Zara said desperately. Check the security cameras. I did. Marcus pulled up something on his computer, turned the screen toward her. Security footage. Timestamp. Error. No recording available. The camera in my dressing room was offline for the past 3 days. A technical glitch. Of course, Catherine had thought of everything. This is a setup, Zara said, looking at Catherine. You did this. You planted that receipt. Catherine's face arranged itself into perfect shock. Me? Why on earth would I do such a thing? To get rid of me. To prove that Marcus can't trust anyone but family. She's hysterical, Catherine said to Marcus, her voice dripping with false concern. This is what they do when they're caught. They deny. They deflect. They blame others. Marcus closed his eyes. Catherine wants me to call the police. File charges. But I can't. I can't do that to you. Not after what you've done for Sophie. I haven't done anything except exist in your house, Zara said, her voice breaking. I haven't stolen anything. I wouldn't. I couldn't. The evidence is right here. Catherine held up the receipt like a weapon. Marcus, I know this is difficult. You wanted so badly to trust her. But we must think of Sophie's safety. We cannot have a thief in this house. I'm not a thief. But Marcus wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the receipt, at the security logs, at the evidence that said one thing clearly. Zara Baptiste, the waitress he'd pulled from obscurity and given a chance, had stolen the most precious thing his dead wife had owned. Zara, he said finally, her name heavy in his mouth. I need you to leave. Give me your keys, please. The betrayal was total. After everything. After the dinners and the conversations and the moment in the music room when Sophie finally started to open up. After Marcus had cried in front of her and told her about his wife and let her into the most broken parts of his family. He believed she was a thief. Zara pulled the keys from her bag, Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold them. I didn't do it. I swear to God, I didn't do it. I know this is hard, Marcus said, and he actually sounded sorry, which made it worse. But I have to protect my daughter. That's all I have left. Tell Sophie, Zara's voice cracked completely. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her the smart move isn't always the one that feels good. Sometimes it's just the one that keeps you alive. She dropped the keys on his desk and walked out, past Maria, who was crying quietly, past the other staff members who wouldn't meet her eyes, into the elevator that suddenly felt like a coffin. When the doors closed, she collapsed against the wall and sobbed. Great, wrenching, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. The kind of crying that happens when you realize the world is exactly as cruel as you always feared it was. She'd been stupid to hope, stupid to believe that being good at her job and kind to a broken child and honest with a grieving father would be enough. Stupid to think that her skin color and her bank account and her zip code didn't matter in the end. Catherine had won. Because Catherine understood something Zara was only learning now in a world built for people like Catherine. Evidence didn't need to be real. It just needed to exist. And once it existed, people like Zara had no defense. The elevator opened onto the marble lobby. Zara walked out into the Chicago night, into the cold November air, into a life that looked exactly like it had 3 weeks ago, except now it had a Marcus and Sophie-shaped hole in it that would never fill. She walked for 3 hours, too numb to feel the cold, too broken to remember how to get home. When she finally made it back to her apartment in Rogers Park, her roommate Sarah took one look at her face and just opened her arms. Zara collapsed into them and cried until she had nothing left. The next morning, she couldn't get out of bed. Sarah brought her tea that went cold on the nightstand. The psychology textbook sat unopened. The future she'd been building, the life she'd been reaching for, felt impossible now. Stupid, a child's dream. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jose at the cafe. Heard what happened. Your job is here if you want it. Another text from Rick, the manager. They're wrong about you. We know you. Sweet, pointless. She was still unemployed, still broke, still exactly where she'd started, except now she knew what it felt like to have everything and lose it in a single conversation. At noon, her buzzer rang. She ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, she hit the intercom. Go away. Open the door, you idiot. A child's voice, fierce and furious. It's freezing out here. Zara's heart stopped. She buzzed the door open and waited, hardly breathing, until she heard small fists pounding on her apartment door. She opened it. Sophie Blackwood stood there, no coat, just her school uniform, her face red from cold and fury, a tablet clutched in her hands like a weapon. How did you get here? Zara's voice was hoarse from crying. I took an Uber. Don't look at me like that. I have my own account. Dad doesn't monitor it because he's an idiot. Sophie pushed past her into the apartment, looking around at the cramped space, the worn furniture, the life Zara had been living. Your aunt is a liar, and my father is an idiot, and I'm going to prove it. Sophie, you can't be here. If your dad finds out, he's going to find out. Sophie set the tablet on Zara's coffee table. Because we're going back there, together, and we're going to show him exactly what his sister did. What are you talking about? Sophie's smile was sharp and cold and absolutely triumphant. She thought I was just a kid who plays piano in secret. She thought I was weak. She forgot that I'm my father's daughter. And my father didn't build a $3 billion company by trusting people. She opened the tablet. I set up my own security system 6 months ago. Hidden cameras. Because I wanted to spy on the nannies, see what they said about me when I wasn't around. The cameras are small, in picture frames in decorative items. They upload to a private cloud that only I can access. Zara's breath caught. You have footage. I have everything. Sophie started pulling up video files. Catherine disabling the main security system. Catherine in Dad's dressing room opening the safe. She knew the code, by the way. Dad never changed it after Mom died. It's Mom's birthday. Video after video. Catherine's calculated theft, her careful planning, the moment she slipped the pawn shop receipt into Zara's jacket pocket, looking around to make sure no one was watching. The frame was perfect, except Sophie had recorded every second of it. She's been planning this for weeks, Sophie said. I went back through the footage. She's been coming here more often, learning the patterns, figuring out when you'd be alone. She waited until she had the perfect opportunity. Why? Zara whispered. Why does she hate me this much? Because you were working. Dad was coming home for dinner. I was talking again. We were getting better. Sophie's voice went hard. And if we got better, she couldn't swoop in and save us. Couldn't position herself as the only one Dad could trust. Couldn't get what she really wants, which is my trust fund, $50 million. dollars. If something happens to Dad or if Dad is deemed unfit to care for me, guardianship goes to the nearest relative, Catherine. And if Catherine is my guardian until I turn 18, she controls that money. The pieces clicked into place. Every sabotage dinner, every lie told to make Sophie look worse, every effort to drive away anyone who might actually help this family heal. Catherine wasn't trying to help. She was trying to break them completely so she could pick up the pieces worth keeping. We need to go, Sophie said. Now, before she convinces Dad to give her temporary guardianship. She has papers drawn up. I heard her on the phone with her lawyer. Zara looked at this small, fierce girl who'd crossed the city alone to save her, who'd been smart enough to protect herself when no one else would, who'd been called impossible when really she was just impossibly brave. Okay, Zara said, let's make the smart move. The Uber driver kept looking at them in the rearview mirror. A black woman in yesterday's clothes, eyes red from crying, and a white 10-year-old in a private school uniform, no coat, clutching a tablet like her life depended on it. They made no sense together. They looked like a problem waiting to happen. You sure your parents know where you are? The driver asked for the third time. My father is about to, Sophie said, her voice cold and adult. Just drive, please. Zara's phone buzzed. Marcus. She'd been ignoring his calls all morning, couldn't bear to hear his voice telling her again that he believed she was a thief, but this call was different. The buzzing was insistent, panicked. She answered. Hello. Where is she? Marcus's voice was ragged, terrified. Where is Sophie? She's not at school. The driver said she never got in the car this morning. Security footage shows her leaving the building at 7 a.m. Zara, if you have her, if this is some kind of revenge, she's with me. She's safe. Bring her home, right now, or I'm calling the police. We're already on our way. Zara looked at Sophie, who nodded. But we're not coming alone, and you're going to want Catherine there when we arrive. What are you talking about? Trust me one more time. Just one more time. That's all I'm asking. Silence. Then you have 30 minutes. The line went dead. Sophie reached over and squeezed Zara's hand. Her fingers were ice cold. He's going to believe us. When he sees the videos, he'll believe us. And if he doesn't, then we tried. That's more than most people do. 23 minutes later, they walked into the penthouse. Marcus stood in the entrance hall, phone in hand, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. When he saw Sophie, the relief that crashed across his face was so intense it was painful to witness. Sophie. He moved toward her, then stopped, uncertain. Are you okay? Did she hurt you? Zara didn't hurt me. She never would. Sophie's voice was steady. Aunt Catherine is the one who hurts people. Sophie, we talked about this. I know you don't like her, but accusing her of... I'm not accusing, I'm proving. Catherine emerged from the living room and Zara finally saw her without the mask. The concern on her face was painted on artificial, but underneath in her eyes was calculation and something that looked like fear. Thank God, Catherine said. Sophie, darling, you had us so worried. Running off like that with her after what she did. Shut up, Sophie said. The adults all froze. Sophie never spoke like that. Sophie was controlled, precise, weaponized in her cruelty, but never crude. Sophie, Marcus said, you don't talk to your aunt that way. She's not my aunt. She's a thief and a liar, and I can prove it. Sophie held up her tablet. I have cameras, my own security system, set up 6 months ago, and I have footage of everything Catherine did. The color drained from Catherine's face. Just for a second, the mask slipped completely, and Zara saw raw panic underneath. That's ridiculous, Catherine said, but her voice was too high too fast. You're a child. You don't have... I'm my father's daughter, Sophie interrupted. He built a company on not trusting people. Did you really think I wouldn't learn from that? She opened the tablet, connected it to the large TV screen in the living room. Sit down, Dad. You're going to want to sit down for this. The first video played in silence, timestamp 9:47 a.m. last Monday. Catherine alone in the computer room, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The angle was perfect, showing exactly what she was doing. Disabling the main security system, setting up the fake technical error that would explain why there was no footage of her crime. Marcus leaned forward, his face going pale. Catherine, what is this? I can explain. Be quiet. His voice was steel. Let it play. The second video, Catherine in his dressing room. The safe opened, Marcus's birthday code entered with practiced ease. She reached in, pulled out a velvet box, opened it. The nightingale necklace brilliant even on camera. Catherine held it up to the light, and on her face was something ugly. Not admiration, possession. She slipped it into her purse, closed the safe, left the room. Third video. Catherine at the kitchen counter where Zara's jacket hung on a chair, looking around to make sure she was alone. Pulling a pawn shop receipt from her own purse, slipping it into Zara's pocket with quick, efficient fingers. Fourth video. Catherine back at the computer typing rapidly, setting the dressing room camera to show the technical error message, covering her tracks with professional precision. The videos played one after another, each one more damning than the last. By the time they finished, Marcus was standing, his hands clenched into fists, his whole body shaking with a rage so cold it seemed to lower the temperature in the room. How long, his voice was barely human, how long have you been planning this? Marcus, please, you have to understand. How long? Catherine flinched, and then something in her broke. All the careful control, all the manufactured sympathy, it shattered like glass. 2 years, she spat. I've been planning this for 2 years. Ever since that woman died and left you a broken mess. Ever since you turned into this pathetic shadow who can't even manage his own daughter. Catherine, no, you want the truth. Here it is. Isabel got everything, everything. The talent, the beauty, the career, you, the money. Even when we were kids, she was the special one, the gifted one. I was just Marcus Blackwood's sister. Nobody, nothing. The venom in her voice was shocking. This wasn't anger. This was decades of resentment finally erupting. And then she died and left you $50 million to put in trust for Sophie. $50 million. Do you know what I could do with that money? Do you have any idea how many years I've spent watching you wasted on that impossible child while you what? Marcus's voice was ice. While you sabotaged my daughter, while you made her look unstable so you could position yourself as her savior. She is unstable. She's broken, just like you. Catherine was screaming now. All composure gone. I was trying to help. I was trying to show you that you can't do this alone. That you need family. That you need me. By framing an innocent woman, Zara spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but cutting. By destroying a 23-year-old girl's life to prove a point. Catherine turned on her, and the racism that had been lurking beneath the surface came flooding out. You're nobody, a waitress, a servant. You think you matter here? You think you're part of this family. You're hired help that forgot its place. She matters more than you, Sophie said, stepping in front of Zara. She saw me. She didn't try to fix me or control me or use me. She just saw me. That's something you never did. You're a child, Catherine hissed. You don't understand how the world works. I understand that you tried to steal from me, from my mother's memory, from my father. Sophie's voice was pure steel. I understand that you're exactly what everyone warned us about. Family that poisons you from the inside. Marcus moved to his desk, picked up his phone. Get out. Marcus, please. Get out of my house. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow. Wire fraud, theft, conspiracy. I have enough evidence here to put you in prison for 10 years. You wouldn't. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided Sophie's trust fund was worth more than Sophie. Marcus's finger hovered over his phone. I'm giving you one chance. Leave now. Never contact us again. Never try to see Sophie. If you do, I turn all of this over to the police. Are we clear? Catherine looked around the room. At Marcus, unmovable. At Sophie, defiant. At Zara, the woman she'd tried to destroy who was still standing. She'd lost. Completely, utterly, irreversibly. You'll regret this, Catherine said, grabbing her purse. Both of you. When that child destroys you completely, when you're drowning in her impossibility, you'll wish you'd listened to me. The only impossible thing here, Marcus said quietly, is that I ever trusted you. Security appeared in the doorway, called ahead somehow. They escorted Catherine out. She went silently now, the fight drained out of her, leaving only the hollow shell of a woman who'd gambled everything on cruelty and lost. When she was gone, the penthouse fell into silence, so complete it felt sacred. 3 people standing in the wreckage of betrayal, trying to figure out how to build something new from the broken pieces. Marcus looked at Zara. His eyes were red. I failed you. What I did yesterday, accusing you, not believing you. There's no apology big enough for that. No, Zara said simply, there isn't. I understand if you want to leave, if you never want to see any of us again. But before you go, I need you to know something. He moved closer, his voice breaking. You saved my daughter, not just yesterday. Every day you've been here. You saw her when I couldn't. You stayed when I would have run, and I repaid that by calling you a thief. You believe the evidence. I believe the easier story. That's different. The evidence was manufactured, but I wanted to believe it because believing you were a thief was easier than believing my sister was a monster. Marcus pulled an envelope from his desk. This is a check for $350,000, your full year's salary, and a letter of recommendation to any graduate program you want. You've more than earned it. Zara looked at the envelope. Freedom, her student loans gone, her father's dream fulfilled, everything she'd wanted when she first walked into this cold, perfect penthouse. But it felt like a payoff, like money given to make the guilt go away. I don't want your money, she said. Marcus's face fell. I understand. What I did was unforgivable. I don't want your money, Zara repeated as an apology, but I'll take it as payment for doing my job. Because my job isn't finished. Sophie's head snapped up. You're staying if you still want me. Zara knelt down to Sophie's level. But we need new rules, no more secrets, no more locked doors. If something hurts, we talk about it. If someone scares you, you tell me. And your dad needs to be part of this, really part of it. No more hiding in his office, pretending the work is more important than you. I can do that, Marcus said quickly. I swear I can do that. And you, Zara said to Sophie, you need to stop pushing people away as a test. Ava, the girl at school who shares her chips. Let her in. See what happens when you stop assuming everyone will leave. What if she does leave? Then she leaves, and it hurts, and you survive it, because you're not impossible, Sophie. You're just a kid who lost her mom and whose dad forgot how to be present. That's not impossible. That's just sad, and sad can heal. Sophie's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for 2 years. I miss her so much. Every single day I miss her, and I don't know how to make it stop. It doesn't stop, Zara said gently. It just becomes something you learn to carry, like a stone in your pocket. Always there, always heavy, but eventually you get strong enough that the weight doesn't break you. Sophie launched herself at Zara, wrapping her arms around her neck and crying with the kind of raw, desperate grief that comes when you finally feel safe enough to fall apart. Zara held her rocking slightly, whispering the things her own father used to whisper when Zara's mother left. I've got you. You're okay. I'm not going anywhere. Marcus stood watching his daughter cry in someone else's arms, and the expression on his face was complex. Gratitude. Grief. Shame that someone else had to teach his daughter it was okay to be broken. I've got you too, Zara said, looking at him over Sophie's head. But you have to do the work. I can't fix your family. I can only stay while you fix it yourselves. I don't know how, Marcus whispered. Start by being honest. Start by being present. Start by remembering that your daughter needs a father more than she needs a perfect house or expensive things or a CEO who solves problems. She needs you, the messy, broken, grieving you. That's who she needs. The change didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly in small moments that built into something bigger. Marcus started coming home for dinner every night, not just physically present, but actually there asking about Sophie's day, listening to her answers. The first week was awkward, stilted, two people who'd forgotten how to talk to each other. But they kept trying. Sophie invited Ava over for a playdate. It was a disaster. Sophie was too intense, too controlling, trying to dictate every game. Ava left early. Sophie cried in her room for an hour. But the next day at school, Ava sat with her at lunch anyway, and they tried again. Zara enrolled in a PhD program at Northwestern Clinical Psychology with a focus on childhood trauma. She still came to the penthouse every afternoon, but now her job was different. Less companion, more family member. The lines blurred in ways that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow felt right. 2 weeks after Catherine's exposure, Marcus stood outside the music room door, hesitating. Inside, Sophie was playing Chopin, the same nocturne she'd been playing the first time Zara found her. You can go in, Zara said from down the hall. I don't know what to say to her. You don't have to say anything. Just listen. Marcus opened the door. Sophie's hand stilled on the keys when she saw him, her whole body tensing for rejection. Can I listen? Marcus asked quietly. Sophie nodded. He sat in the chair by the window, the one Isabel used to sit in while Sophie practiced. And Sophie played. She played her mother's favorite pieces, and Marcus listened with tears streaming down his face. And when she finished, he said, Your mother would be so proud of you, not just your playing, everything about you. Your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. Even when I'm impossible, especially then, she was impossible too. Impossible to predict, impossible to control, impossible to forget. That's what made her extraordinary. Marcus moved to the piano bench, sat beside his daughter. I'm sorry I locked this room. I'm sorry I tried to erase her from our lives. I was a coward. You were scared. I was terrified. I still am. Every day I'm terrified of losing you the way I lost her. So you pushed me away first. Yes, stupid right, really stupid dad. They sat there at the piano, not playing, just existing in the same space. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a movie moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was just a father and daughter learning to breathe the same air again. After a while, Sophie said, will you learn to play with me, not to be good at it, just to do it together? I'd like that very much. 3 months later, the Isabel Blackwood Foundation held its inaugural benefit concert at Symphony Center. The foundation's mission, providing music education and therapy to children dealing with grief and trauma. Funded entirely by Marcus. Directed by Zara, who'd deferred her PhD for a year to get it running. The concert hall was packed. Chicago's elite in tuxedos and gowns, along with families from the foundation's programs, kids in their best clothes sitting next to people who could buy the building. Backstage, Sophie stood in a black concert dress, her hair done professionally for the first time in years. She looked older than 10. She looked terrified. I can't do this, she whispered to Zara. There are 800 people out there. You don't have to. Mom played for thousands. Your mom was a professional. You're a 10-year-old honoring her memory. Those are different things. What if I mess up? Then you mess up, and 800 people will see that perfection isn't the point. Connection is. Marcus appeared wearing a tuxedo that made him look like the man from magazine covers again, except his eyes were different now. Softer. Present. You ready, kiddo? No. Good, neither am I. He held out his hand. Let's be not ready together. The lights dimmed, the crowd quieted. The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Please welcome Sophie Blackwood and her father Marcus Blackwood performing Debussy's Clair de Lune. They walked onto the stage together. The piano was enormous under the lights. The crowd was a dark mass of expectation. Sophie sat at the piano. Marcus sat beside her at the second bench they'd brought out. Their hands found the keys. This was Mom's second favorite piece, Sophie said into the microphone, her voice small but clear. She played it on Sunday mornings. She said it made the day start soft, like the world was still sleeping and anything was possible. She paused. We're not very good at this yet. Dad just started learning 3 months ago, but Mom used to say that music isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. So this is us being honest. This is us remembering her together. The first notes rang out. Sophie's part was technically beautiful, exactly right. Marcus's bass line was clumsy, uncertain, exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd only been playing for 3 months. But together somehow it worked. The melody carried by Sophie's confident hands, the foundation provided by Marcus's stumbling but earnest effort. It wasn't perfect, it was something better. It was real. Marcus hit a wrong note. Sophie adjusted, brought her part down slightly to cover it. He looked at her grateful, and she smiled just a little. They kept playing. In the audience, people weren't just listening. They were witnessing something. A father and daughter rebuilding themselves note by note. A family learning to exist in the same space again. A child honoring her mother not by being perfect, but by being present. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. But Sophie barely heard it. She was looking at her father, who had tears streaming down his face, who was looking back at her like she was the most extraordinary thing he'd ever seen. They stood, bowed, walked off stage together. Backstage, Marcus pulled Sophie into a hug. We were terrible. You were terrible. I was fine. You were better than fine. You were extraordinary. Mom would have laughed at how bad you were. She would have laughed, and then she would have made me practice until I got it right. Marcus pulled back, looking at his daughter's face. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for learning to be my dad again. Zara watched from the wings, and her heart felt too big for her chest. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not easy, not a straight line. Just people choosing every day to show up for each other. 6 months after Catherine's exposure on a Saturday morning in May, Zara arrived at the penthouse to find something different. Photos on the walls, pictures of Isabel, of Sophie, as a baby of the family they used to be. Marcus had finally unpacked the memories. Sophie was at the kitchen island doing homework. Real homework, not the fake stuff she used to pretend to do to avoid conversation. She looked up when Zara entered. Ava's coming over later. We're going to Navy Pier. That's great. You two seem really close now. She's my best friend. Sophie said it simply, like it was obvious, like friendship was the most natural thing in the world. For her, now maybe it was. Marcus emerged from his study Saturday casual in jeans and a t-shirt. Zara, good timing. I wanted to talk to you about the foundation's expansion. The board approved funding for 3 more cities: Boston, Seattle, and Atlanta. We'll need to hire regional directors set up. Marcus, Zara interrupted gently. It's Saturday. The foundation can wait until Monday. He blinked, then smiled. You're right. It can wait. This was new too. The understanding that work would always be there, but these moments wouldn't. That Sophie wouldn't be 10 forever. That healing required presence, not just good intentions. Actually, Sophie said, closing her textbook, I was thinking we could all go to Navy Pier. The 3 of us and Ava. They have that new Ferris wheel. I have calls scheduled. Marcus started, then caught himself. No, I don't. The calls can wait. Let's go. They went. 4 of them in Marcus's car. Ava chattering about school drama. Sophie actually laughing. Marcus asking questions and seeming genuinely interested in the answers. Zara sat in the front seat and watched this family that wasn't hers, but somehow was this family she'd helped stitch back together. At Navy Pier, they ate overpriced hot dogs and rode the Ferris wheel twice. Marcus won Sophie a stuffed penguin at one of the rigged carnival games, spending $200 to win a prize worth 5. Sophie named it Chopin and said she'd keep it forever. As the sun set over Lake Michigan, turning the water golden pink, Sophie leaned against Zara on a bench, while Marcus and Ava went to get ice cream. I'm happy, Sophie said, like she was surprised by it. Is that okay? Is it okay to be happy when Mom is gone? Your mom would want you to be happy. That's what love is. Wanting the people you love to be okay, even when you're not there to see it. Do you think she knows that Dad and I are better now? I think if there's anything after this, any kind of watching or knowing, then yes, she knows. And she's proud of you for being brave enough to let people in. I'm glad you didn't leave. After Aunt Catherine, I'm glad you stayed. Me too. Will you always stay? It was the question Zara had been dreading, because the honest answer was complicated. She was 23 years old with a whole life ahead of her. Eventually, she'd finish her PhD. Eventually, she'd have her own practice, her own family, her own path that diverged from the Blackwoods. But that was years away, and what mattered wasn't forever. What mattered was now. I'll stay as long as you need me, Zara said. And when you don't need me anymore, when you're strong enough to stand on your own, I'll still be a phone call away. That's what family is. Not people who live in your house. People who live in your heart. Sophie thought about this. You live in my heart. You live in mine too. Marcus and Ava returned with ice cream. They sat on the bench together, 5 people who shouldn't have made sense as a unit, but somehow did. A billionaire and a PhD student, and 2 10-year-olds, and the memory of a woman who'd loved music more than anything except her family. The sun finished setting. The pier lights came on, reflecting off the lake like stars. Somewhere in the city behind them, Catherine Blackwood was living with the consequences of her choices. Somewhere in the future, all of them would face new challenges, new grief, new moments of breaking and rebuilding. But right now, in this moment, they were okay. Not perfect, not fixed, not healed completely, just okay. And okay was enough. 2 years later, Zara defended her dissertation, Attachment and Resilience in Children Experiencing Parental Loss. Sophie sat in the audience, now 12, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself. Marcus was beside her, his arm around her shoulders. When Zara finished, when the committee told her, "Congratulations, Dr. Baptiste," Sophie jumped up and screamed, "That's my Zara," loud enough that the entire academic hall heard it. Marcus didn't shush her, he just smiled. That evening they had dinner at the penthouse. The table was set for 8 now. Maria, the housekeeper, who'd become more family than staff. Jose from the cafe, who'd never stopped checking in on Zara. Ava and her mother. Sophie, Marcus, and Zara. The conversation was loud, chaotic, full of laughter and overlapping stories. This was what a home sounded like. Not silent and perfect. Alive and messy and real. After dinner, Sophie and Marcus played piano together. They'd progressed to harder pieces now. Rachmaninoff, Gershwin, things that required real skill and coordination. They still made mistakes. Marcus still hit wrong notes. But they were making music together, and that was what mattered. Zara stood by the window looking out at Chicago, thinking about the girl she'd been 2 years ago, serving coffee to people who didn't see her, drowning in debt and exhaustion. Invisible. That girl wouldn't recognize her life now. Dr. Baptiste, director of a foundation that had helped 3,000 children. Living in a small house Marcus had helped her buy, close enough to visit the Blackwoods, but far enough to have her own space. She'd made something of herself. Not because a rich man had given her money, though, that had helped, but because she'd been brave enough to see a broken child and stay, to see a grieving father and insist he do better, to see a family falling apart and believe they could be put back together. Speech, Sophie called out. Dr. Baptiste needs to give a speech. I'm not giving a speech. You have to. It's tradition. What tradition? The one I just made up. Speech. Everyone took up the chant. Speech, speech, speech. Zara laughed, held up her hands in surrender. Okay, okay. She thought for a moment. 2 years ago, I served you a grilled cheese sandwich, and you threw it on the floor. I thought you were testing me. And you were, but you were also asking a question. Sophie tilted her head, curious. You were asking, will you see me? Will you stay even when I'm impossible? Will you believe that I'm worth the effort? Zara's voice got thick, and the answer was yes. Is yes. Will always be yes. Not because you're perfect now. You're not. You're still stubborn and difficult and way too smart for your own good. Hey, Sophie protested, but she was smiling. But you're also brave and talented and capable of love, even after love hurt you. And that makes you extraordinary. Zara looked at Marcus. Both of you. You're extraordinary because you kept trying, because you didn't let grief win, because you chose each other even when it was hard. She raised her glass. So here's to the impossible things. To the children who push us away because they're afraid we'll leave first. To the fathers who hide from pain because facing it feels like dying. To the families that get broken and have the courage to build something new from the pieces. You're not impossible. You're just human. And that's enough. They raised their glasses, clinked them together. And in that moment, in that round of glass meeting glass and voices raised in celebration, something that had been broken for a very long time finally felt whole. That night, after everyone left and after Sophie went to bed, Marcus walked Zara to her car. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For seeing us, for staying, for being the thing we needed even when we didn't know we needed it. You did the hard part. I just held the door open. You're the one who walked through. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, maybe not as fast, maybe not as gracefully, but you love your daughter. That was always enough. You just had to remember how to show it. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. One more thing. I'm stepping down as director of the Blackwood Foundation. What? Why? Because it's yours now. You built it. You run it. It should be yours officially. He handed her the envelope. The board voted unanimously. You're the new executive director. Full authority, full control, salary commensurate with the position, which is a fancy way of saying you're about to make enough money that you'll never have to worry about anything again. Zara stared at the envelope. Marcus, I can't. You can, and you will, because that foundation isn't mine. It's Isabel's legacy, and you understand her legacy better than anyone. You understand that it's not about music or money. It's about seeing the broken things and believing they can be beautiful again. He stepped back. Sophie and I are going to be fine now. We have each other. We have tools. We have therapy and honesty and the understanding that grief doesn't end, but it does change. You gave us that. Let us give this to you. Zara opened the envelope. Inside was a contract, a salary that made her gasp, and a note in Sophie's handwriting. Dear Zara, thank you for teaching me the smart move. Now go make smart moves for kids like me. Love, Sophie. Yes, you still have to come to dinner on Sundays. That's non-negotiable. Zara laughed through tears. Sunday dinners are non-negotiable. Every single week, Sophie's orders. Then I'll be here. She got in her car and drove home through the Chicago night, past the cafe where this had all started, past her old apartment where she used to eat ramen and dream of a different life. She'd found that different life, not by chasing it, by standing still when a broken family needed someone who wouldn't run, by being brave enough to say, I see you when everyone else looked away. The story of Sophie Blackwood, the most dangerous child in America, ended the way all good stories end. Not with perfection, not with all the wounds healed, but with hope, with the understanding that broken things can learn to hold light again. That impossible children are just children who haven't been seen correctly yet. And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to look, one person willing to stay, one person willing to believe that the smart move isn't always the easy one. Sometimes it's the move that costs you everything, that breaks your heart and rebuilds it, that changes you so completely you can't remember who you were before. Zara Baptiste had been a waitress who could barely pay her rent. Now she was Dr. Baptiste, executive director, the woman who'd done the impossible. She'd reached a child everyone said couldn't be reached, and in the process, she'd saved herself too. The woman walked into the Riverside Cafe on a Tuesday afternoon. She was young, maybe 19, with purple hair and a backpack covered in band patches. She sat at table 7, the one by the window, and ordered coffee with a voice that trembled. The waitress who took her order was new, efficient, but not unkind. "Rough day. Rough life," the girl said, trying to smile. "But I'm working on it." She pulled out a laptop, opened it to a scholarship application essay. The prompt: describe a moment when someone saw potential in you that you didn't see in yourself. She stared at the blank page, cursor blinking. The door opened. A woman walked in, 30 years old now, confident in a way that came from surviving hard things. Behind her, a 17-year-old girl, tall and graceful, moving like music even when she was just walking. They sat at the counter. The teenager saw the girl at table 7, saw the blank page, saw the trembling hands. "You okay?" she called over. The girl looked up, defensive. "I'm fine. You look like I used to look. Like the world is too big and you're too small and nothing's ever going to work out." "Sophie," the woman said gently, "let her be." "No, because someone didn't let me be. Someone saw me and stayed." Sophie stood up, walked over to table 7. "You applying for something?" "College, maybe. I don't know. It's probably stupid." "It's not stupid. Wanting more is never stupid." Sophie pulled up a chair without being invited. "I'm Sophie. That's Zara. And before you tell us to go away, you should know that she saved my life once by refusing to go away." The girl blinked. "I don't understand." "You will," Sophie smiled. "Tell me about yourself. And don't say you're nobody, because I used to say that too. And it turned out I was wrong." At the counter, Zara watched Sophie with a girl who needed someone to see her, and she thought about how healing works, how it multiplies, how one person being brave enough to stay can teach someone else to stay, can create a chain of staying that reaches forward through time. She thought about a 10-year-old who threw plates and hid in music rooms and pushed away everyone who tried to love her. That girl was 17 now, applying to Juilliard, playing concerts for the foundation. Still difficult, still impossible, still exactly who she was supposed to be. And she was teaching someone else that impossible just meant not yet understood. Zara paid for her coffee and Sophie's hot chocolate, left a $100 tip for the new waitress who looked like she needed it, waited while Sophie exchanged numbers with the purple-haired girl, promised to help her with the essay, refused to take no for an answer. They left together, stepping out into the Chicago afternoon, and behind them in the cafe, a girl stared at her blank page with something that might have been hope. The world was full of broken things, learning to hold light again. And that Zara thought was enough, that was everything.